My name is Allison Calvert, and I will be the host for this TLC session. We're excited that you have joined us today for the lived experiences of students in the online classroom. Please welcome Dr. Jason Brockman.
Hi, thanks very much, Allison. Okay, so what I'm going to be presenting here today is essentially my dissertation research. And what the plan is to kind of blow through the first few slides, which just describe the study a little bit. I don't need to go into too much detail about the study itself because I really want to get to the data and the results. And I think that that's the most interesting part of the whole study. So the lived experiences of students in the online classroom is a phenomenological study. And what we're looking at is to kind of understand what the student perspective is as they experience the online classroom. And the reason that I was very interested in online students is first and foremost because online education is becoming the preferred choice for adults. We don't understand a whole lot about how online students spend their time engaging in the learning process, because in many ways it's hidden to us. And as we know, a lot of universities are expanding their online degree programs. And I think that, in the next 20 or 30 years, just about every major university is going to have some form of completely online degree programs. So getting to know a little bit more about these types of students is important. So just looking at the problem that we're facing when it comes to online education, I compared traditional and non-traditional schools, and one of the major problems, as I think most people are aware of, is retention. But the difference between on-ground or traditional schools and non-traditional schools is really pretty stark. So the difference in first-year retention rates, graduation rates, and how much of the student population is exclusively online in a non-traditional type of an institution that services adults, the retention rate is much lower, the graduation rate is much lower, but the number of students that are enrolled in exclusively online programs is way, way higher. And so the general problem that I set up was that, even though online learning is a prevalent choice for a variety of reasons for non-traditional students, online degree programs don't have the same success rate. And so there's lower retention and graduation rates. More specifically, the experiences of non-traditional students isn't completely holistically understood. And that results in a lack of faculty development efforts that could focus on mitigating the psychological effects of bad experiences in the classroom and in the student's environment. Essentially, a lot of what we know comes from the types of research that's data-driven, that has to do with surveys, student satisfaction surveys, demographic-type studies, but not a whole lot about just tell me what it's like. Just let me know what's going on. And so the purpose of this study was to understand how the students that are enrolled in these asynchronous online degree programs experience and, more importantly, conceptualize the classroom and the participants. So I really wanted to know, what is going on in your head, because it's really a strange phenomenon if you think about it. When it comes to exclusively online education, exclusively asynchronous, there's no real face-to-face interaction. And so everything that happens between the people that are involved in the classroom has to happen in the imagination. The only thing that you're experiencing really through your senses is a computer screen and these images or these pictures that are on the computer screen. So I wanted to learn more about what's going on outside of the computer screen and inside of their heads. And this is an important study because online learning is a prevalent choice, and it really provides access for a lot of people that normally wouldn't have access to an education. And I don't want to diminish how important that is. There's reasons for people with families or their job or their age or the way they feel about themselves, or their military status, their finances. They all have a great opportunity to attend college and be successful through online schools, but obviously the graduation rates are lower, and traditional brick and mortar campuses are doing well at graduating students, but it's really not something that everybody can access. So getting to the theoretical framework, this is the part that really focuses on the brain. And it's really important to understand, that every single person is experiencing the online classroom in conjunction with everything else that's going on around them. And so that creates emotional context. And you kind of have to understand the emotional context to understand perhaps what is going on in somebody's brain. And then it's important to understand that the state of a person's mind, the state of their brain, is tied to how well they're going to be able to learn and stay motivated and be successful when it comes to cognitive processes and things like that. So this leads me to my question. The general question is, well, what are the experiences of these non-traditional students that are pursuing bachelor's degrees that can experience or that can influence success or failure? So what are they experiencing, and how is that going to make them successful or contribute to their failure? Going through the literature review, I looked at the difference between online and on-ground education, student satisfaction, some of the demographic characteristics of adult learners, the role that the brain plays in learning, online faculty development efforts, and then in general, just how lived experiences are researched from a qualitative perspective. So this is a qualitative, phenomenological, and more specifically descriptive phenomenological approach to finding out more about this. All right, getting to the results. I interviewed 10 adult students. The average age was 43 years old. The average interview length was about 80 minutes, and that resulted in 370 pages of transcribed data from those interviews. I had 4 research sub-questions, and after going through the transcriptions and coding them, the themes that appeared in relation to these 4 research sub-questions are as follows. The first question was, what are some of the ways that students experience the relationship between themselves and instructors in online classrooms? And the items from the transcripts that kind of fit into this question were from the themes of interaction with instructors, feedback, and instructor expectations. And just a little note about the themes. These are things that kept coming up over and over and over again in the interviews, and they sort of like make the essence of the experience. When a student is in the online classroom, these themes are kind of like hovering over everybody's experience. Interaction with instructors, it's an important part of the experience. Feedback is an important part of the experience. And then instructor expectations is also important. But these are the themes. I'm just going to go over these quickly. These are the sorts of themes that came up, and I decided they fit in relation to these sub-questions. Sub-question 2, what are the emotional reactions that students have when experiencing caring and compassionate behaviors from instructors and peers in the classroom? And again, the theme of interaction with instructors came up. I also found a lot of information in interaction with other students, a separate theme. The next sub-question, what are the situations that students experience that cause them to feel high levels of anxiety or distress while they're navigating through an online course? And the themes that tied in nicely with this sub-research question, there was a lot of talk about school versus life balance, family life, and working or career. Next research question, how do non-traditional students experience confidence in their abilities when they're challenged by instructors, the curriculum, external influences, or peers in the online classroom? And there was a lot of talk about self-motivation. Surprisingly, the use of multimedia is a tool that can help students to gain confidence, and then gaining confidence through career advancement and career development. Okay, so now we get to the discussion and the sort of interpretation of the findings. Okay, so what exactly are the experiences of non-traditional students that are pursuing online bachelor's degrees that can influence success or failure? And I want to just note that when I'm talking about this, as I talk about these results, I'm going to be talking in general just about the students in this study. I'm going to try not to generalize. Every student experience is different. I mean, it's important to kind of understand that there's about 7.5 billion people on the planet, and every person has their own experience, their own interpretation of what's going on, their own brain, their own senses, trying to make sense of the world. So for at least the students in this study, these are some of the things that I'd like to discuss. So what are some of the ways that students experience the relationship between themselves and instructors in the online classroom? There's in this study, a lot of the students expressed that there's either a good relationship or a bad relationship. And what I mean by that is that I was focusing on whether or not they felt that the instructors or anybody else really was part of their team or not part of their team. And this goes kind of back to the theoretical framework. One of the very interesting books that's been mentioned actually a couple of times in this conference is Social by Lieberman. And it's this idea that our brains are wired to trust people that are part of our social group or our tribe. And this is kind of a feature of primate evolution in that when we feel like people are part of our group, we feel comfortable, there's less anxiety, we trust them. When we feel that people are outside of our group of whether it be family or friends or whatever our social group is, if they're outside of that, there's sort of an antagonistic mindset that is almost neurological, almost biochemical. So when looking at these relationships, how did students experience whether or not an instructor was part of their group or not part of their group? And this kind of manifests itself in a bunch of different ways. But essentially, there are things that instructors can do to make it seem like they're not on your side. That's a little different. It's not that like I'm on your side, I'm there for you, but I'm a part of the experience for you, and I'm part of helping you to get through this classroom. Or I'm not part of your group. And there's a lot of different cues that students have that somebody's, not really part of what they're doing. But if they're not part of the group, then the student experiences the relationship as antagonistic. And that can cause anxiety and a whole bunch of problems for navigating through the course successfully. All right, so moving on. What are the emotional reactions that students have when experiencing caring and compassionate behaviors from instructors and peers in the online classroom? And this one surprised me a little bit because what I was looking for was caring in sort of a different definition. But what the data showed and what students frequently said was that caring, I was thinking caring as in Care Bears, like I want to give you a hug, I love you, let me care for you like a person that loves you, right? But caring sort of started to come across as even from instructors and peers, caring came across as different. Not the emotional sense, but more like I'm going to take the time and put effort into doing things that are going to help you along. And that was both from instructors and peers, like, let me help you with your career. I was looking more for caring in terms of like, be empathetic. I've got these health problems or something like that. And, oh, well, I care a lot about your health and everything else. But caring was sort of in a strange way, in an academic sense. Caring meant feedback. Caring meant not giving canned responses in the discussion forums. Caring meant, offering extra ways for me to complete the assignment or do something along those lines. So this kind of surprised me just a little bit. Sorry, let me open. Okay, I just wanted to see the chat look like something was in there. Okay, and then going on to what are the situations that students experience that cause them to feel high levels of anxiety or distress? I was kind of, again, surprised by this one, but not surprised. The things that I was kind of looking for were curriculum related. Like, what is making you feel anxiety or distress in the classroom? Are you having trouble, with the problems, reading, writing papers, and that sort of thing? But really, the things that cause them to feel high levels of anxiety or distress were coming from outside of the classroom. I was, looking at, well, what, are you math? Does math cause you anxiety? That sort of thing. Not surprisingly, everybody did express some level of anxiety with math, but more important, it was all of these other things that keep happening in their lives that were making it difficult for them to get through the course and to do their work. They really, if in a perfect world, in a bubble, in an environment where there was nothing going on outside of the classroom, they all would have done great in their courses, and they all expressed, an eagerness to get into the materials, to study, to work on their papers, to learn more. But all of this other stuff keeps happening. And when all of this other stuff keeps happening, the only thing that you can do is hold on with your fingernails and just try to get through this course and do the best that you can. And I felt like that must make it really, really difficult to actually learn. All they're trying to do is make it through, not really get into the material and do that deep dive that would be possible if all this other stuff wasn't happening. And when the brain is in an anxious state, it's almost impossible really to put a high level of cognitive load on, making it difficult. So how do non-traditional students experience confidence in their abilities when they're challenged by their instructors, curriculum, external influences, or peers? And what I was looking for was what sorts of challenges are going to make you feel anxiety or make things difficult for you. But the surprising result was the way that these students experienced confidence was through doing things like bringing the work to work, bringing the homework to work. They were becoming more confident because in a lot of cases they were working in an industry and their degree was to help them advance in that particular industry. So as they're moving through their coursework, they're able to bring the discussion to work and seem like more of an expert or more knowledgeable. Then they started to gain confidence in their abilities in school. And other things, the use of multimedia was really a big one. A few students expressed that they just were never very good at school. And I sort of started to learn that some people have a real challenge with reading comprehension. And that kind of makes them uncomfortable because maybe a traditional education system is set up so that you read, you remember, you regurgitate. But that reading part, the very first part, makes it difficult. So some students started to gain a lot of confidence in their critical thinking abilities and their ability to pass courses when they discovered that there's other ways to absorb the material, especially when a lot of things are going on. So if you have work or if you've got family going on and there's you can't sit down and open a book, podcasts, audiobooks, videos, there's a lot of different ways that you can study and manage your life at the same time. And when you're able to make that happen, you gain confidence in your abilities in the classroom, because now finally you're comprehending the material, you're able to get more out of the curriculum and the course. So I thought that was very interesting. Let me check the chat here real quick. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat for questions, but I can't see the window while the PowerPoint is up. Okay, so let's get to the limitations of the study. All of the students that participated were successful graduates. They had already basically made it through the degree program. Another limitation was the data collection method, and this was just due to IRB. I wasn't able to record them on video. I could only use audio, and that's a shame because I was really looking for emotional responses, and seeing somebody's face would have provided a lot of cues to how they were recreating the experience in their minds, and it might have led to more insight into their emotional states. And another limitation, all the students were at the end of the degree programs. I would have really liked maybe to have conducted a longitudinal study where I could see how the experience changed as they were moving through their degree program and getting to the end, because I'm sure the experience for a new student is much different from one that's already basically finish their degree program. Okay. So let's just get to the implications. I want to talk a little bit about the community of inquiry model, because what I was finding was that these students didn't care all that much about engagement. And I really was looking for that. I wanted to find ways that we could improve the experience by increasing the amount of engagement in certain areas. But they all talked about the fact that they really weren't there for engagement. All they wanted to do was get through the curriculum, and they wanted people to help them along the way. And so it means that, like, I think there needs to be a little bit more research into whether or not engagement is good for all types of students. Because there's no doubt that certain students, I'm sure, benefit from engagement. But for some of the ones that I spoke with, at least the students in this study, a lot of them were either busy with their career, their family, or they were a little bit older. The average age was 43. And they sort of seemed like they weren't really there to engage. What they wanted to know was, what is it exactly that I need to do so that I can get this done and move on and move through it? And the attitude wasn't so much, I don't want to learn, I just want to get through it. It was more like, I just want to focus on the material and the curriculum, and I want the instructor to help me. But I don't want to engage in discussions with my peers, and I don't really want to engage in intellectual discussions with the instructor, and I don't want to make friends, and I don't want to participate in any social, social media things or whatever else like that. I have a life outside of the classroom that I'd really like to get to as soon as I can. So the quicker you can tell me how I can get this done and get through your class with the grade that I want, the better. And the faculty requirements that are imposed by the university to give students the impression that there's a high level of interaction in the classroom, I think should be revisited. I honestly think that more emphasis should be placed on exactly what I just said, feedback, and making sure that the instructor does exactly what is necessary for that particular student or any particular student in their course, so that the expectations are clear, they know exactly what they need to do to get through the course and get the grade that they want, and then they can move on. And when you put requirements on faculty so that they have to concentrate their efforts in areas that don't really matter all that much to the student, I don't think that's a good thing. So maybe there should be more research into that. And some other things, one of the need to be right and to come to conclusions quickly is something that I found very interesting, and this is sort of a function of the brain. And if you think about being out there and in the evolutionary pathway, human beings would have to know right away whether something was a danger, or whether you could eat that thing, or if it would kill you. And so the brain has this weird setup where it needs to be right, and it needs to come to these conclusions quickly. And if that doesn't happen, it causes anxiety. And this goes back into what I'm talking about, that students just want to know what they need to do to be right, and they want to be able to come to the conclusions quickly. They want to be able to move on, and if they can do that, it sort of diminishes the level of anxiety that they're facing. But what I would like to see, as far as research, is maybe a little bit of mind mapping or neurological research to find out exactly what's being triggered as students are doing things like receiving feedback or navigating through the online classroom. Are the same centers of the brain that are responsible for this need to be right and come to conclusions quickly, are these being activated in different ways as they interact with faculty members? And I just want to be conscious of time. I think I've got about 3 minutes left. Is that right? So getting through everything, I think the whole idea here was to recommend a couple of things. And so I'm only going to talk about two things that I think we should work on as far as development efforts. I think we need to help develop faculty so that they understand that adult students can't be compared to traditional students. And that should be very simple. We should also train faculty to use multimedia resources that can deliver content in ways that allow students to save time. I think there's this great opportunity, and for the students in this study, they were doing homework at work, they were doing homework on their commute, any way that they could, so that when they finally got home and they took care of the family and they had just an hour or two to do a discussion forum before they had to call it a night and go to bed, if they could have ways to absorb the material in the curriculum, like podcasts and audiobooks and videos or anything that they can do to get ready for that night of finishing their homework would be extremely helpful. And last, I think that the experience can be improved. It definitely can be improved. And what students need are team players. And it's really important to understand that there's 3 people in the course. There isn't just the instructor and the student. There's a third unseen antagonistic force that is the curriculum. And whether you think of that as another person or something else, that is always going to be antagonistic. And if the student thinks that the instructor is the one that created the curriculum, which is the difficult hurdle that they have to get over, then they're going to lump that instructor in with that third person or the curriculum as an antagonistic force. But if instructors can show that I am part of your team and together we're going to get through this curriculum and I'm going to help you, that would go a long way in helping students to be more successful in online classrooms. And so that's it. I will stop sharing now. I see a few things in the course. Chat, I don't know how much more time we have, maybe 30 seconds.
You can finish up. You have about a minute.
Okay. And do students really understand engagement and the benefits of it? I think that students do understand engagement. It's just a personal decision, and it depends on their experience of whether or not they want a high level of it, or if they just want to, get through the curriculum and meet the requirements. And Dr. Marcia, yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answer for the discussion forums and instructor requirements, but I can't help but keep going back to the more that you make instructors do that doesn't focus on the mission, which is to get the student through the course and be a part of their team, the more you make them focus on other things, the less they'll have time to do job number 1, which is the way that they're going to get students through courses. The student experience is either friendly or not friendly when it comes to instructors, and some are good, some are bad. And one final thing that I want to say, just if we could find ways to do that, is to make the instructors team players, then we would stop failing students, because nobody's going to try to fail somebody that's on their team, right? And if we stop failing students, we stop failing the students. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Brockman, for your presentation, and for all of you for joining in this session today. Please be sure to enjoy the rest of TLC. Thanks so much.
Thank you.